They thought he was just another old beggar outside the store, until the CCTV revealed a truth no one was ready for. That day, the sun was just beginning to set as people gathered at a small convenience store on the edge of town. In a corner of the yard, beneath a withering flame tree, sat an elderly man with a white beard and a worn-out military duffel bag beside him. He wore a faded green jacket, frayed cargo pants, and a cap pulled low over his face. His back was hunched, his posture quiet, almost as if he was trying to disappear from a world. Some passers-by glanced at him briefly, then picked up their pace. A few others scoffed quietly, visibly annoyed. One muttered under their breath, "Another beggar. Why does he have to sit here?" Day after day passed, weeks even, but the old man never spoke. He didn't ask for money. He didn't moan or plead. He just sat there, motionless, his eyes always fixed across the road, toward an elementary school that dismissed every afternoon. He sat, and he waited. Inside the store, a young cashier named Lena began to notice. Every day at 4 p.m. sharp, he appeared, always in the same spot. He never stepped foot inside the store, never bothered anyone, and yet his presence made some customers uncomfortable. "Doesn't he have a home?" one woman asked while glancing nervously out the window. "People say he's a war veteran," the security guard replied with a shrug. "But who knows? Maybe that's just a story." The store manager, Mr. Hottie, grew concerned. "If he starts driving away customers, we got a problem," he said one morning. So he asked the security guard to speak to the man. The guard stepped outside and approached the old man, who remained seated, still and silent. "Sir, I'm sorry, but you can't stay here like this every day. This is store property." The man slowly turned his head. His eyes were tired, but sharp. "I'm not begging, son," he said calmly. "I'm waiting." "Waiting for who?" the guard asked. "Waiting for something." He said nothing more, just turned his eyes back to the road. Lena watched the whole thing from behind the register. Something about it unsettled her. The man wasn't angry. He didn't argue or plead. He just waited, as if there was a reason no one else could see. That afternoon, a small child crossed the road alone. He struggled with a heavy backpack and walked slowly, tired. From across the street, the old man watched closely. Moments later, a thin man in a black hoodie appeared behind the child, walking a little too quickly. The veteran stood, slowly, his eyes focused. But before anything could unfold, it was over. The child reached home safely. The man in the hoodie suddenly turned and walked away, and the veteran quietly returned his seat. Lena saw it from the window, but she wasn't sure what she had just witnessed. Maybe it's nothing, she told herself. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave her. Was he really just a beggar? Or was there something much more going on? By the end of that week, the old man had become a quiet mystery. Some people dropped coins near him out of pity. Others crossed to the other side of the street just to avoid him. A few teenage boys even laughed as they passed, mocking his worn-out jacket and the way he sat motionless like a statue. "He's probably just crazy," one of them said, tossing an empty soda can near his feet. But the old man didn't react. He simply reached into his bag, pulled out a small folded cloth, and wiped the dirt from a photograph he always carried. A faded picture of a little girl with a wide smile and a blue ribbon in her hair. No one noticed. No one cared. Inside the store, Lena couldn't get him out of her mind. The way he watched that child the other day, the way that hooded man suddenly turned away, something about it kept tugging at her. One afternoon, during her break, she brought out a cup of warm tea and quietly placed it beside him. The old man nodded politely. "Thank you," he said, without making eye contact. "You always sit here," Lena said gently. "Do you live nearby?" "I used to," he replied, "but it's not the place I return to anymore." Lena hesitated. "You're waiting for someone?" He looked across the street. "Something," he corrected. Before she could ask more, a delivery truck honked behind her, and the moment passed. That evening, store manager Mr. Hottie reviewed the day's sales and frowned. Customers are complaining again. That man outside, people say he's scaring their kids. "But he's not doing anything," Lena argued. "He doesn't have to. His presence is enough to make people uncomfortable. I'm installing new CCTV cameras tomorrow. If he's causing a problem, we'll have proof." Lena said nothing, but her thoughts were racing. The next morning, a technician installed a new surveillance camera facing the front corner of the store, angled perfectly to capture the area where the old man always sat. Mr. Hadi seemed satisfied. Now we'll see what he's really up to. Later that day, just after school ended, a little girl stood at the corner, hesitating before crossing the street. A man in a baseball cap was pacing nearby, acting nervous. The girl stepped forward, and the man moved in her direction. Then, suddenly, the veteran stood up. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He simply appeared between the girl and the man. Quiet, unmoving, like a wall. The man stopped, turned his head slightly, and without a word, walked away. The girl crossed safely. Lena saw it happen again. She quickly looked at the security footage, fast-forwarding to the exact moment. And there it was, clear as day. The old man, calm, quiet, and purposeful. The man in the baseball cap, hesitant, circling, backing off. Lena's heart pounded. This wasn't a coincidence. This old man wasn't begging. He was watching, waiting, protecting. But from what? The next morning, Lena arrived early and went straight to the security office. She pulled up the footage from the last 5 days and scanned through the hours the veteran had been sitting outside. Frame by frame, she looked for anything unusual, any moments that didn't feel right. It didn't take long. In 2 separate recordings, she saw the same thing. A child walking home alone. A suspicious man trailing behind. And each time, the old veteran subtly shifted, stepping forward just enough to make his presence known. The strange man always walked away. Lena's stomach tightened. This wasn't just one lucky moment. It was a pattern, and no one else seemed to see it. She burned the clips onto a flash drive and kept them in her bag, not because she knew what to do with them, only because something told her they might matter. That evening, as the sun began to set, the veteran was there again, sitting beneath the same tree, in the same position, silent as ever. But Lena noticed something else. His eyes were tired, not just from age, but from the weight of watching, constantly alert, as if every child crossing the street was a heartbeat he couldn't let stop. She walked over and handed him a sandwich. He looked at it, then up at her. "You're the girl from the register." "Yes," she said. "You've been watching over them, haven't you?" The man paused. Then, for the first time, he gave a small smile. "Children don't know the monsters in this world," he said quietly. "But I've seen them. I've chased them in deserts, in jungles, in cities that forgot their names." He took a bite of the sandwich. "I lost someone once. My granddaughter. Taken right from in front of her school. They never found her." Lena's breath caught in her throat. "I couldn't protect her," he whispered. "But maybe I can protect someone else." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Just the sound of the breeze through the tree above, and the distant laughter of children playing near the school gates. "You never asked for thanks," Lena finally said. "No," he replied. "Heroes don't ask for thanks. They just stay until the job's done." That night, Lena walked home with her thoughts spinning. She looked again at the flash drive in her bag. She knew now this wasn't just footage. It was evidence of something no one else was willing to believe. And it wasn't over, because tomorrow the old man would be there again, waiting. The next day began like any other. Children spilled out of the school gates with backpacks, bouncing and laughter echoing. Cars lined the street as parents came to pick up their little ones. And there, in the same exact spot, sat the old man, his eyes as sharp as ever beneath the shade of the tree. But Lena felt something was different today. It wasn't just the air, which carried an unusual stillness. It wasn't just a veteran, who seemed more rigid, more alert. It was the man across the street. He wore a dark hoodie despite the heat, hands shoved in his pockets, face half concealed. He leaned casually against a lamppost, pretending to scroll through his phone, but Lena could feel it. He wasn't watching traffic. He wasn't watching the shop. He was watching the children. And the veteran noticed. The tension in the air shifted. Subtle, but real. Lena stepped outside the store, and pretended to sweep the front area, eyes trained carefully on both men. She could see the veteran adjusting slightly, sitting up straighter, his gaze locked onto the hooded figure, like a soldier scanning a target. No movement was wasted. He was waiting again, not for something, but for him. The hooded man began to move. A small boy with a red backpack wandered too close to the alleyway that led behind the store, just for a moment, chasing a bouncing rubber ball. And then the hooded man took a step. So did the veteran. No words, no warnings, just motion, fast, precise. The hooded man reached for the boy's arm, and then, out of nowhere, the old veteran was there. He grabbed the man's wrist before it made contact. Hard, controlled. The younger man tried to pull away, but he was no match. With one hand, the veteran twisted the man's arm behind his back and pushed him to the ground. The boy stumbled back in confusion. The hooded man groaned in pain. Lena dropped her broom and ran forward, yelling for help. By the time the security guard and Mr. Hadi ran outside, the veteran had already released the man and stepped back, arms raised calmly in the air. He tried to take the child. The veteran said simply. The hooded man denied everything. But Lena pointed at the store's CCTV camera above the alley. It's all recorded. Police arrived minutes later. The veteran stood silently as they questioned everyone. Lena handed them the flash drive, her voice firm. This isn't the first time. The officers reviewed the footage on site. Their eyes widened. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't a vagrant. This wasn't a beggar. This was a man on a mission. As the hooded suspect was handcuffed and placed into the back of the squad car, people began to gather. A few parents pulled their children close. Some of them recognized the boy with the red backpack. His mother arrived moments later, sobbing in relief. And the old veteran? He sat back down under the tree, just like before, silent, still. But now, the world around him had changed. They didn't look away anymore. They looked closer. Later that evening, after the crowd had dispersed and the store had closed its doors, Lena stayed behind. She connected her phone to computer, took a deep breath, and began uploading a short clip of the surveillance footage. She trimmed it down to just under 2 minutes, the boy wandering off, the hooded man moving in, and then the sudden, quiet intervention of the old veteran. She added a single caption. This man isn't a beggar. He's been protecting our children. And no one noticed. She hesitated before posting. Then she pressed upload. By midnight, the video had been shared nearly 300 times. By morning, it had reached thousands. People commented with disbelief, then with guilt. I used to pass that man every day without even looking at him. I gave him coins once. I feel ashamed now. How many children has he saved that we'll never even know about? Lena arrived at the store just after dawn. She found Mr. Hadi already waiting, staring at his phone with a stunned expression. This thing's everywhere, he said. News stations are asking for interviews. Someone from the city council called. Lena said nothing. They both stepped outside. The veteran was there, as usual, but this time there was a cup of coffee already placed beside him and a folded blanket on the bench. And next to it, a little note. Thank you. He didn't say much when they approached, just nodded once and looked across the street. As children began arriving for school, some of them broke away from their parents to wave at him. One little girl even ran across the sidewalk and gave him a quick hug before darting back. The old man smiled, just barely, and then, like always, he returned to his post, watching, waiting, protecting, not because someone told him to, not because he wanted praise, but because it was right, because it mattered. And now, for the first time, people saw him, truly saw him, not as a beggar, not as a problem, but as what he had always been, a guardian, a quiet, steady, unseen shield between danger and the innocent. Within 48 hours, the city had a new headline. Mystery veteran foils attempted child abduction. Footage goes viral. TV crews parked outside the mini market. Reporters knocked on store windows, asking for interviews. Parents who once avoided the old man now stood in line just to thank him. Some brought food, others brought flowers. Children waved at him from across the street every morning, clutching their backpacks a little tighter. But the veteran remained unchanged. He didn't move to the spotlight. He didn't give interviews. He didn't even say his name. When asked by a journalist who finally caught up with him, he only responded, "I did what any soldier would do. I stayed until it was safe." The city council held an emergency meeting. That very week, they passed a motion to create a Community Guardian Recognition Award and named the old man its first recipient. A small ceremony was planned at the local park near the school, just across from the spot where he always sat. But when the big day came, with a podium, flowers, and folding chairs, the veteran was nowhere to be found. The mayor looked around, puzzled. Where is he? Lena stood up and pointed across the street. And there he was, sitting quietly beneath the tree, watching the children again. He didn't need applause. He needed to see. Because even now, with the cameras gone, the reporters distracted, the crowd shifting focus, he knew the threat hadn't disappeared. It never really did. That afternoon, another man loitered too close to the school gates. He wore a cap pulled low and carried a duffel bag, glancing back and forth nervously. The veteran saw. He rose slowly from his bench, walked across the street, and simply stood beside the gate. The man in the cap looked at him once, then again, then walked away without a word. No confrontation, no report, just presence. And once again, danger dissolved in silence. By now, the store manager had installed a small bench near the front entrance just for him. A sign hung behind it, carved out of wood by a local craftsman, reserved for the watchman. Some days he sat alone. Some days parents joined him with coffee. But every day, without fail, he remained. The man everyone had once ignored was now the one everyone relied on. Not because he wore a badge, not because he held a weapon, but because he showed up, because in a world where danger wore invisible clothes, he chose not to. One gray afternoon, the sky hung low over the city. Rain threatened, but hadn't yet begun to fall. The veteran sat under the flame tree as always, eyes scanning the schoolyard, motionless but ever aware. That was when a woman approached. Not young, not old, perhaps in her late 30s. She wore a modest coat and carried a file in her hands. She stood silently in front of him for a few moments, unsure whether to speak. "You don't remember me, do you?" she finally said. The veteran looked up, brow slightly furrowed. "I'm sorry. My name is Sarah. Sarah Manetta." She held out the file. This is my daughter, Lacey. She's a little girl you stopped from being taken 2 weeks ago." The veteran remained quiet, but his expression softened. Sarah sat down slowly beside him. "I wanted to meet you properly," she said. "You saved her." And I almost didn't believe it until I saw the footage myself. The veteran nodded gently. "I'm glad she's safe." Sarah hesitated, then opened the file in her hands. Inside was a police report, a printed photo, and an old yellowing newspaper clipping. She turned it so he could see. It was a front page of a local paper from almost 20 years ago. The headline read, "Child missing outside school. Granddaughter retired soldier disappears." Below the headline was a photo. A little girl with a blue ribbon in her hair. The veteran's breath caught. His fingers trembled as he gently took the clipping. "She was 6, he said softly. "Her name was Lily. She waited for me to pick her up that day. But I was 5 minutes late." Sarah placed her hand on his. "You never stopped searching for her, did you?" "No," he whispered, "and I never will." There was silence between them, heavy but not cold. Then Sarah said, "The man you stopped, the one who tried to grab my daughter, he's connected. Same methods, same areas. There's a task force looking into older cases now. Your footage might help open doors that have been shut for decades." The veteran's eyes welled up, not from sadness, but from something else. Possibility. Sarah stood, wiping a tear from her cheek. "If there's even a chance. I thought you want to know." She left him with the file. As the first drops of rain fell, the veteran sat motionless beneath the tree, clutching the photograph of Lily. His other hand gripped the edges of the case file. He looked not across the street this time, but upward into the clouds. Not for signs, but for strength. Because maybe, just maybe, the past wasn't finished speaking. The following days passed like a haze. The veteran no longer sat with the same stillness. His eyes no longer drifted toward the school, but instead down at the file Sarah had given him. Open and reread countless times. Pages inside were creased now, worn from trembling fingers. One document stood out, a police sketch, blurry and aged, of a man seen near Lily's school on the day she vanished. The image was faint, barely a resemblance, but there was something in the jawline, the slope of the nose. It matched the man in the hoodie, the one he had stopped weeks ago. The man already in custody. Lena saw the change in him. Each day, she watched him arrive earlier, sit longer, barely eat, barely blink. Then one evening, just after sundown, a black sedan pulled up quietly in front of the store. Two men stepped out, one in uniform. Detectives. Lena rushed the window. They approached the veteran gently, cautiously. "Sir," one of them said, "we've connected some dots." The veteran didn't respond. The second detective continued. "The suspect you stopped, his name is Gerald Price. He's been using aliases for over 2 decades. We believe he's involved in a ring that operated across 3 states." The veteran looked up slowly. "We're reopening cold cases," the detective said, "including the one involving your granddaughter." Silence fell, the kind that comes not from fear, but from the soul holding its breath. The detective handed him a folder. Inside, fresh photos, evidence from a recently searched storage unit in another city. Among the items was a blue ribbon, carefully bagged, labeled, preserved. The veteran's hands trembled. "That's her ribbon," he whispered. "She wore it every Friday." Lena stepped outside just in time to see him close his eyes, clutching the file to his chest. A single tear slid down his weathered cheek. "Do you want to come with us, sir?" one detective asked softly. The veteran nodded, but before stepping into the car, he turned to Lena. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing me." Then he got in, the door closed, and the sedan pulled away, slow, steady, disappearing into the night. Lena stood there long after the car was gone. She looked over to the bench beneath the tree, empty for the first time in months. Rain began to fall, but the bench remained, and so did the sign, reserved for the watchman, because even though he was gone, his watch wasn't over. Not yet. For the first time in months, the corner in front of the store felt exposed. The man who had become a silent fixture of the community, who once faded into background like a shadow, was now gone. But everyone felt his absence, especially the children. Some paused each morning before crossing the street, scanning the empty bench, waiting for a nod or that faint, reassuring smile. Parents looked over their shoulders more often. Even the local delivery guys slowed down when passing the store. Something was missing inside the mini-market. Lena placed a small candle near the bench. She didn't light it. She just left it there, a quiet symbol that someone was still waiting. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, behind closed doors and heavy silence, the veteran sat across from a wall of photos. Most were evidence. Some old case files, others unsolved posters. One was Lily. He leaned forward, pointing a map on the wall. "You said Gerald Price had access to storage units. Where's this one?" "Rochester," the detective replied. "An hour west. We're digging through old lease records. We found personal items, clothing, and other things." The veteran's voice dropped. "Was Lily's name there?" The detective hesitated. "No, not yet, but we're still processing the materials. It takes time." Time. The veteran had learned to live with it, endure it, but now it felt cruel. The next morning, as the sky broke into orange and pale blue, something shifted in town. A woman in a wheelchair came to the bench and left a small bouquet. A group of children tied yellow ribbons to the tree. And without coordination, without instruction, the town began to show up. Just show up. They didn't speak. They simply stood by the bench for a minute or two, then walked on, some with their heads down, others wiping tears. Because now they knew they hadn't just passed a man, they had passed a shield, and that shield had quietly protected them all. Back in the station, the veteran sat motionless until one of the detectives rushed in holding a brown envelope. "Sir," he said breathlessly, "we just got a call from the unit in Rochester. They found a photo. It's old and the face is damaged, but the back is marked." He pulled out the photograph, written in faded ink. "Lily, age 6. The veteran didn't speak. He simply took the photo, held it close, and closed his eyes, not in pain, but in silent recognition. He whispered, "I knew you waited." The officer beside him placed a hand on his shoulder. "We're going to keep digging. If she's alive, we'll find her." The veteran opened his eyes again. Sharp, focused, ready. Then, "I'm not done yet," he said. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks passed. News outlets across the region picked up the story. Veterans Vigil leads to breakthrough in 20-year-old abduction case. Lily's name trended briefly on social media. Candlelight vigils were held in 3 towns. But amid the noise, the veterans stayed quiet, watching, waiting, moving with purpose in the shadows. Just like always, detectives followed the trail left behind by Gerald Price. And slowly, painfully, the puzzle began to take shape. In an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of Rochester, a team found journals, twisted records of children taken, moved, and lost over decades. Among them, a page stained with time. Lily, blue ribbon. The fighter. She had escaped. That single note, buried in filth and rot, was the first real sign that Lily might still be alive. The veteran, seated across from the lead investigator, read those words over and over. "She fought," he whispered. That night, he didn't return to the police station. He didn't return to the shelter where they had offered him a bed. He returned to the bench. The flame tree was blooming again. The red flowers hung above like quiet flames, signs of a world that kept turning even as he held still. Lena saw him from inside the store and ran out, breath caught in her throat. "You're back!" He nodded. For now. She didn't ask where he'd been. She just sat beside him. Then, without a word, she handed him something wrapped in cloth. It was a new jacket, dark green, durable, weather-resistant. He smiled slightly as he unfolded it. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied. "But neither did you." They sat in silence until her phone buzzed. She checked the screen, froze, then turned to him. "It's a detective. They've got something." Within an hour, he was back at the precinct. A grainy image had surfaced from a traffic camera, dated 3 months earlier. A woman at a gas station near the Vermont border. Age estimated, late 20s. Brown hair, small scar on her jaw. But it was her eyes. Those same eyes from a faded photograph. They ran the image through recognition software. 98.4% match. "She's alive," the lead investigator said, "and we think we know where she is." The veteran stood slowly. No tremble this time, only clarity. And wait, they sent a car that night. Quiet, unmarked, no flashing lights, just 2 officers, and the man who had never stopped searching. The reunion didn't happen in a burst of music or dramatic hugs. It happened in a quiet living room of a rented cottage near the woods, where a woman stood frozen in the doorway as the old man stepped in. She didn't remember much, but when he took out the photo, the one of her as a child, wearing a blue ribbon, she cried. Not loudly, just enough. She stepped forward, touched his hand, and whispered, "I knew someone was looking." Back in town, the bench under the tree still waits. The candle has melted, the flowers are faded, but the sign remains. Reserved for the watchmen, because heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear scars, and sometimes they sit quietly on a bench, with eyes that see everything, and a heart that never stopped holding on, even when no one else did.